Well, it marks the first significant threat from Paris and London since the start of the war. French, British and Canadian leaders are tonight threatening concrete action against Israel if it refuses to halt its renewed offensive on Gaza and lift aid restrictions. The joint statement sharply criticises Israel's decision to allow a limited basic amount of supplies into the territory following a blockade that's lasted nearly 3 months. Separately, nearly 24 nations are demanding that Israel immediately allow a full resumption of aid into Gaza after 9 trucks were authorised to enter the enclave. Also this Monday, Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel planned to take control of all of Gaza. Eliza Herbert has the latest.
This was a 3-storey building. A family was inside the house when Israel targeted it without prior warning, according to these neighbours who tried desperately to rescue them.
When I came here, I found bodies in the street and under the rubble.
Nearby in central Gaza, a funeral is held for victims of an Israeli raid on the Al-Aqsa hospital. One man lost his brother and other relatives. He says words fail to describe what they are living through.
The fridge is full of bodies. Enough is enough. A solution must be found, and the world must intervene. Muslims must also act to stop these massacres, which are targeting innocent civilians. Where are human rights?
But the situation for people in Gaza is set to get worse. The Israeli army has launched new ground operations in the enclave. These residents in Han Yunis say that Israeli soldiers disguised themselves in civilian clothing and shot and killed a man. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Monday his forces plan to take control of the entire territory of the Gaza Strip. However, he has agreed to let in minimal humanitarian aid, citing diplomatic reasons.
We simply won't have support and we won't be able to complete the mission of victory.
Since March, Israel has blocked all humanitarian aid from entering the enclave, meaning food is scarce and unaffordable. The UN's food security experts have warned that 1 in 5 Palestinians, some 500,000 people, face starvation. And nearly 71,000 cases of malnutrition among children under 5 are expected within the next year. Netanyahu is currently wanted by the International Criminal Court for charges related to crimes against humanity and war crimes, including using starvation as a method of warfare.
For more, we're joined now by Tommaso Della Longa, spokesperson with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Tommaso, thanks again for being with us on the programme this evening. We have spoken several times before. 5 trucks now carrying baby food and other desperately needed aid, as far as we know, have actually crossed into Gaza. The UN describing this as a drop in the ocean. Just how critical is the humanitarian situation in Gaza right now?
First of all, thanks, Sharon, for having me again tonight. Well, the situation, I would say, the humanitarian situation in Gaza, I would say, is more than critical. It's simply a nightmare that every day Palestinian Gaza have to survive. Basically, what we are seeing here, I mean, and the images that you just showed are pretty clear. We're looking into a lack of food, malnutrition of kids. On our side, we're looking into more than half of the health clinics of Palestine Red Crescent who have ceased operation because there is not anymore medicines, medical equipment, fuel for the generators. Less than half of the ambulances of Palestine Red Crescent are working inside the Gaza Strip, and I think that these are clear signals of where the situation has gone and how much it's needed to resume the entrance to humanitarian aid at scale in Gaza Strip immediately. And
as we say, 5 trucks have so far made it into Gaza. How does this compare with the amount of aid that was entering the territory during the ceasefire? A reminder that the WHO says 2 million people are starving there.
5 trucks, it's simply way less than a drop in the ocean. Then, of course, we don't want to underestimate any possible positive news when it's coming to the entrance of humanitarian aid. This means also that maybe there are negotiations and dialogues ongoing, and the international community, the diplomatic community, maybe is trying to do something more for the people in Gaza. But here we are talking about 2 million civilians who need everything, without infrastructure, without electricity, without clean water, without hospital, basically without anything that you can feel that it's necessary for our well-being and our lives. So, of course, the reality here is not even hundreds of trucks every day will solve the issue. The only way to solve the issue is to stop the hostilities and really start a humanitarian operation at scale, with humanitarian aid entering from any way possible inside the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, we've seen the leaders of Britain, France and Canada putting more pressure on Israel today, saying that perhaps sanctions might be used to pile pressure on the Israeli government. What's your view? You've talked about how you hope that we're going to have a full resumption of aid into the territory. What is your view of this US-Israeli-backed plan to distribute aid in Gaza by sidestepping organisations such as yourselves and the UN?
Well, thanks for this question. I have to say that it's difficult to speak about a plan without full details. What I can tell you is that we continue to monitor all the media reports that we are seeing about this new way, so-called new way of distributing aid. Of course, our position is clear. This risk politicization of the humanitarian response. It can compromise safety and perception of humanitarian workers. And I think it's very important to remember that aid should be delivered by skilled principled humanitarian actors who are also trusted by the communities they serve.
And we're talking about food slowly starting to trickle in, and those few trucks that have been let in. What's the situation, Tommaso, when it comes to things like fuel and medical supplies and water?
It's simply catastrophic. We are speaking about life-saving treatments like insulin for people with diabetes, or chemotherapy, or medicine for people who have issues to the heart, that are severe cardiac issues, who are not anymore available. We are talking about basic medical equipment in the Palestine Red Crescent health clinics. More than 74% of these basic medicine and medical equipment for primary care are not anymore there. Simply the humanitarian operation, the health support to the population will cease, will completely stop in the next coming weeks and months if the situation will not change. And we are not anymore looking at something that could happen in 6 months or a year. We are looking to a situation that is worsening every other minute, clinics that are closing, hospitals that are closing, and people in Gaza will not get any kind of health support if the situation will not change.
And Tommaso, meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes are continuing. We're seeing dozens of people being killed each day, Palestinians still being displaced. There have been more attacks, for example, on Khan Yunis today and elsewhere. Where is there at this stage for these people to go, and what kind of conditions await them?
It's simply shocking, I have to admit, and deeply frustrating to keep speaking about this, because since the beginning of this conflict, now has been more than a year and a half of this conflict, we have been saying that people were displaced 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 times. Now we're talking about people displaced more than 10, 12, 13 times, in a situation where simply our key message stayed the same. There is no safety for civilians around the Gaza Strip. We're talking on highly dense population, area densely populated, where 2 million people have no way to go, no way to escape, no logistics to escape. So then our call, and again, I want to underline our frustration, our call is really on the protection of civilians in any condition they are, of the protection and respect of humanitarian workers in any condition they are. This is critical, and this is really the basic of every emergency situation, armed conflict, wherever in the world.
Tommaso, we'll have to leave it there for now. Thanks for being with us, though. That is Tommaso Della Longa, spokesperson with the International Federation of the Red Cross.